This guy opens for one of the biggest comedians ever, man, Russell Peters. Yeah, big time. All right, listen, we got a real treat. Put your hands together right now for Vinayak Pal!
And I was raised by a single Indian mom. And what that means is, thank you guys, thank you. And what that means is, I'll go to her with all my problems and she just make things worse. You know, I'm like, hey mom, there are a lot of people who are calling me fat. And she's like, you are not fat. You just have a big appetite. Or like, hey ma, there are a lot of people who are calling me dumb. And she's like, you're not dumb. You just want to be a comedian. Or like, hey ma, there are a lot of people who are calling me ugly. And she'd be like, you're not ugly. You just look like your father. So like I said, I was raised by a single mom. My grandma flew in from India to come take care of me and my brother when my mom was off at work. And one thing my grandma told me was, if I prayed to God, I get whatever I wanted. I've been praying all this time and I still don't have white people confidence. Do you guys know what white... Of course you guys do, but... But white people this is white people confidence. It's having the guts to go to your parents and ask for an allowance and not get beat up. You know? I remember I tried this stuff with my mom. And I was like, hey mom, can I have an allowance? She was like, what is that? I'm like, oh, I'll do chores, like do the dishes, take out the trash, and you pay me every week. She slaps me across the face. And she was like, you are lucky I allow you in this house.
That's so true.
Now my grandma, right? So she, like, I would have my American education during the mornings and afternoons. When I come back home, she would give me a hella Hindu superstitious education at nights. And what that means is I was a certified astrologer and palm reader by the time I was 7. Like when I was going to school and they're studying all about the constellations, I was too busy predicting everyone's futures. I even ran a little side business during lunch. I'd read kids' palms in exchange for their Lunchables. I was a kids' cuisine millionaire, dude. Dude, and some of these kids, they did not like their destinies, let me tell you. My boy Jimmy, he wanted to be in the NBA. I read his palm like, bro, you're not making it past 5 foot. You're not making your JV team. He starts crying. He runs to the teacher. She puts me on timeout. I'm like, why am I in trouble if he's going to be a loser? The palm don't lie. Now, I gave up on all this astrology, palm reading stuff for the longest time, but then I was applying for like private high schools in the South Bay area, and they all asked for an essay talking about your skills. So as a joke, I said, I read palms. And when I went to that high school, one of the staff members came up to me and was like, hey, can you read mine? And I was like, wow. Grown adults asking teenagers for life advice. The American education system, everyone. You want to know the worst part? She was the high school guidance counselor. Now, I remember my mom talking to me about cops at a very young age. She gave me a cop talk. And what she did was she took me to a park. There were a bunch of cops all over the place, and she said, hey, you see those people? Those are cops. Don't get in trouble with them. And if you do, don't talk to me. fine. Now, when you're 5, the idea of an emergency, right? Like, everything's an emergency to you. Oh, my crayons are broken. There's not enough glitter in my glitter glue. All that type of stuff. And I remember seeing a commercial on TV saying, call 911 in case of emergency. And so my mom didn't let me play outside, and I called the cops on her. And true story. And I remember seeing the cops, like they're coming in, and they're about to talk to me. I'm like, justice is about to be served. This is going to be great, you know? And the cops look at me and say, you're a bad, bad boy. I was like, what? They're like, never call us again. And I was like, wow. If I expected justice, and I knew I was going to get nothing, I should have just asked God. You know? I assume there's a lot of Christians here. I was raised hella Hindu. And a big part of hella Hindu, dude. A big part about Hinduism is cows are a sacred animal. Now, the way my mom explained that to me was she said, cows are holy. I was like, got it, cows are holy. I go into kindergarten for the first time. All these white kids are saying, holy cow. I'm like, oh, it's holy for you guys too? And I go back home, and Mom tells me cows are a spiritual animal. I was like, got it, cows are spiritual. I go into the cafeteria the next day. One of my buddies is eating ground beef. I'm like, how can you eat spirituality? This must be what you call soul food. And I go back home, and Mom tells me, if you eat beef, you're going to die. Totally believe her. Totally believe her. And then at school, they're serving something called a hamburger. Now, look, in my Hindu head, ham is not beef. I'm in the clear. But no, I take a bite out of this thing. All my friends are telling me it's beef. I am crying. Because I think I am going to die. So I run over to the principal. He's totally confused. He calls my mother up, and she's like, what is going on? And I'm like, Ma, I ate beef. Why am I not dead yet? She's like, oh, I was just kidding. That was my first Santa Claus is not real moment. Now, in the South Bay, I was in a city called Santa Clara, and like most of the people who live in Santa Clara, Indians or Asians, and for us, it's not normal to divorce, having a single mom or any of that. So I was around people all the time with full families, and they'd be asking me where my dad's at. I didn't know what to say. So I asked my babysitter, I was like, hey, Alexis, where's my dad? She looks at me and says, Vinayak, you do not need a father in your life. You have strong female figures taking care of you. I was like, oh, guess I don't need a dad. And then we get a flat tire. So we get out the car, we check the flat. I'm like, hey, Alexis, you know how to fix one of these things? She's like, no, but my dad does. I was like, oh, guess it's a good time to have a father in your life after all, huh? And then we go home, and Alexis is talking to my mom in a whisper so I don't hear. She's like, hey, Vinayak asked me where his dad was, and I didn't know what to say. And I'm eavesdropping the whole time. And my mom replies back with, oh, he's probably off with a bunch of hookers. I don't know what a hooker is at this point, but I really want to know where my dad's at. So I go onto Google and look up, where can I find a hooker? And for the longest time, I thought my dad was in a place called Craigslist. Now, like I said, I was raised around Indians and Asians my whole life, and a lot of them would be making fun of me for not having a dad. The first, Father's Days were the worst for me, man. Every day, every Father's Day in the art class, we'd be making a mug or something saying, world's greatest dad. School had me make a mug. Every freaking year. And then one year, while I was making one, all these kids are talking about their dads, and I just go out of the classroom. This one kid named Jamal runs after me. And Jamal's like, hey, Vin, why'd you run out of the classroom? I was like, Jamal, I don't have a dad. He was like, oh, you don't have a dad? I don't have a dad. You must be black. I don't know what that means at 6, dude. So I go over to my Hindu conservative mother after school. I'm like, hey, Ma, I'm black now. And she's like, what do you mean? You were Indian 3 hours ago? What happened today? And I was like, oh, Ma, I don't have a dad. She's like, oh, silly boy, God is your father. And I was like, oh, are you calling me Brown Jesus? And she's like, exactly. But keep it a secret, or else you might get crucified. I remember one of my best buds, like growing up, his name's Matthew, right? I remember the first time we met, he was telling me, hey Vin, I don't have a dad either. And I was like, what? You don't have a dad either? Holy shit, let's be best friends! Yeah? Like, serious, and fun fact, we're best friends to this day. Like, straight up. And, you know, Matthew and I, we bonded over being the same type of fucked up. There's a spark to it, you know? Like, the reason Matthew and I became best friends is the same reason the Kardashians date pro athletes. We never had a real father figure. Like, my dad didn't have the balls to raise me. Caitlin proved he didn't have to have any. I moved to Oregon for high school. And you're from Oregon? Oh, you just moved? Oh, yeah, there we go. You went to college there, of course, yeah. It's a white crowd. I expected half of you to go to Oregon. No, seriously, white people took over that state. Holy shit. Like, when I went to Oregon, I was surrounded. It was a culture shock, man, and I studied you guys. White people are really good at divorce. Holy shit. Like, white people divorce so fast, lawyers need to wear Nikes just to keep up. Now, I also get a lot of shit for talking about white people and their divorce problems when my parents aren't together. And what I gotta say is, white people and brown people get married for 2 different reasons. White people get married because they're in love. Brown people, it's more like, oh, you have a rich family, I have a good job, we can make this work. Or, we already have 2 kids. I went to my first white wedding recently, up in Tampa, Florida, of course. And I loved it. But at the end of the whole ceremony, they said, till death do us part. I was like, bullshit. No. There's a statistic on you guys. It's not looking good. It's bad, man. And I found out in certain states, it's a felony just to lie. Who thought white-on-white crime was just marriage? Like, once lynching became illegal, they needed a new way to tie the knot. I like you guys, you're fun. Yeah. One thing about Indians is we don't like to spend money. And I bet you guys know. Freaking, my mom would never buy me a toy or anything, ever. And she said, we don't have money. And I thought we were poor. Turns out she just didn't want to buy me shit. Like, my bedroom was the living room sofa, just because she didn't want to buy a bed. And I was like, Ma, you could have saved all the costs of going to the chiropractor if you just bought me a bed. Straight up. And for the longest time, I thought we were poor. Like, forever, I thought we were actually poor. And I was talking to one of my buddies, he's a comedian named John. We're talking together, we're talking about our issues in life, and I told him about the whole bed situation. He said, oh dude, that sucks. And I was like, yeah, and I started going over the schools I went to, and he told me, hold up. Dude, those are all private schools. And I was like, yeah, of course, which one did you go to? And he was like, bro, private schools are for rich people. I was like, what? No! My mom told me public schools are for dumb people. And that's why I went to private. That's all she said. And what I classified as rich was having 2 parents and owning a home. That's what I thought rich was, because I didn't have either of those. And John was telling me, yeah, dude, I have 2 parents and we lived in a home. I'm like, well, okay, so you lived in a home, you must be rich. He's like, yeah, in the worst part of town, and it kept getting broken into by crackheads. And I was like, oh, but you have 2 parents. He's like, yeah, my dad was the crackhead. So the next time I saw my mother, I was like, hey, Mom, we were never poor. And she was like, I never said we were poor. I just invested a bunch of money in your education. So when I get older, you take care of me. So now, when she visits me in Los Angeles, she lives in my living room sofa. I remember my teenagers when I was going through puberty. She was the hardest person to talk to about things. You know, I couldn't ask her about anything. Even before teenage years, we were doing like a 5th grade first aid class. And what they taught us was, how to use an EpiPen if it gets really bad, how to use mouth to mouth. And after the class, right, I was feeling really weird, like really swollen. And I go over to my teacher, I'm like, hey, I need an EpiPen. And she's like, why? I'm like, it's swollen. She's like, what's swollen? I'm like, down there. And she said she wouldn't give me the EpiPen. I'm like, if it's that bad, give it mouth to mouth. I remember I was always talking to her. Like now my mom and I were open about sex, we're open about dating and all that stuff. But in Indian culture, it's like we're super shy about that stuff, and I don't get it. Because it was an Indian Hindu who wrote the first book about sex, right? Like the Kama Sutra, that was us, buddy. Like, thank you. Like other religions are kind of jealous about that shit. It should be a bragging point, you know? Like take Islam, for example. Muslims, I think they're very jealous of Hindus because the way we spread as religions. Islam spread through war, pillage, and force. Hinduism spread through yoga, meditation, and fucking. So, like when the first Muslim came into India, he's like, dude, this is different. Wow. And these guys wrote the first book about sex. Amazing. And this book teaches them how to find the clitoris. That's awesome. We probably should have read this before we decided to cut that shit off. Now that joke definitely gets a mixed reaction. And what I gotta say is, I'm being very pro-clitoris right now. That's the most feminist Muslim joke you're ever going to hear. Now during my college years, one of my best friends, his name was Raj, and Raj is a Hindu too. We were talking and he was telling me he was having issues with getting with women. And I was like, okay, let's see if Hinduism can solve this one for us, buddy. And I was like, oh, what you gotta do, take the Kama Sutra, go over to an eligible lady and say, hey, can you help me practice my religion? It fucking worked! It worked, and that's the best thing about being a Hindu in the US. We could use our First Amendment rights to get laid. I remember talking to my mom. I was like, hey, Mom, I'm not a virgin. And she was like, I get it. I was your age once, too. I was like, for real? What? Wow! And then she was like, but you should have stayed a virgin like me. And I was like, you have 2 sons. What do you mean? And she was like, oh, you know the whole Virgin Mary thing? I did that. An angel came down and gave me a brother. And I was like, oh, but what about me? And she's like, oh, Satan is an angel too. Any couples in the audience? Yeah? There you go. There you go. That's what's up. Happily married, I assume? That's a sub. There we go. I was in a relationship for 2.5 years. We didn't get married, of course. But the last 1.5 years was not going so well. It was pretty bad. Like at one point she said, Vin, I don't support you being a comedian. I was like, wow! I don't support you being a bitch. Now, I'm not going to say, though, I was the best boyfriend, but I did do things to make her feel special. Like, when I was in Boston and she was in Toronto, I took a 16-hour Greyhound just to see her. 16 hours on a Greyhound changes a man. I was hanging out with the Amish, and I liked it. And when I get off the bus, she greets me, and we go on a date at a mall, and we're having dinner, we're talking it out, and then she says, Vin, you're 90% of what I want in a man. I'm like, 90%? I'm a fucking A, that's amazing! And then she says, but I'm breaking up with you. I'm like, what? Why? And she's like, you're not my 100%. I'm like, wow, you're breaking up with me using a reason that sounds like a compliment. That's like if I went up to a lady and I was like, you're the woman of my dreams, but only in my dreams because in reality you suck. And a lot of people ask me, Vin, if it wasn't going so well, why'd you keep the relationship going? And I was like, well, you know, she's white, and I like the taste of privilege. Some of you get it. But like every race has a certain rhyme when you date them. Like once you go black, you never go back. Once you go yellow, you end up a little mellow. And once you go brown, you never frown. And then once you go white, you end up with all the rights. Any moms in the audience? Moms? That's awesome. I know you're here. That's my mom right there, everybody. I'm going to tell you guys a story I've never said on stage before about my mother and I. So this was like a bonding moment for the two of us. We go to southern India, one of the strictest parts of India, to go to a Hindu temple, like for a big pilgrimage, right? And we get in the taxi, and as we're driving through southern India, there's a bunch of cows all over the place, right? And that's like normal in India. Cows can do whatever they want. You can't do anything about it. They're like our white women, you know? And like it's known, you do not go near the cows. You just can honk at them, and they usually get out of the streets. But as we're going through the highway, one cow runs in the middle of it, and we hit the damn thing, and all I hear is I was like, did I just kill a cow in India? Holy shit, I'm a felon. Like, that's bad, man. Now, we're driving past the cow. The cops are now chasing us. This is a true story. The cops are behind us. I'm like, wait, I just killed the equivalent of a white woman, and cops are chasing me. This is like the Indian OJ, man. It's not good. And then the driver looks at me and says, oh no, not this again. Oh no, not this again. How many cows have you killed in India? He's like, 6, sir. I was like, 6? You're a serial killer, dude. This is not good. I'm an accomplice. So now we're driving all throughout this freaking state. We evade the cops. We escape, but then the car breaks down. It breaks down. And then this guy with the wagon comes towards us. He's like, yeah, I'll drag your car to the airport. You know what's carrying his wagon? Fucking cows, dude. I felt like that's just like if a Nazi was on war crimes trial and his lawyer was like, yeah, my name is Elijah Rosenberg. It's fucked up, I know, but man, I'm in LA all the time, right? And My biggest culture shock from moving from the Bay Area to Los Angeles is everyone keeps speaking Spanish to me. And it is the Mexicans who keep misbrowning me the most. Do you know how hard it is to tell brown people you're not their type of brown? Dude, I was in a sandwich shop run by Mexicans. I get my sandwich, go over to the cashier. He's like, hola, ¿cómo estás? I'm like, yo, dude, I'm Indian. He's like, no. I'm like, dude, I'm Indian. He's like, no. Bro, I'm Indian. He's like, fine. You can be Indian today. But I'm gonna convert you. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? He's like, oh, you're just gonna marry my sister. I'm like, what? You're gonna give me your sister just like that? He's like, don't worry, I got 10 more. Now, growing up Indian, though, you're either an engineer, a doctor, or you're adopted. And since I'm a stand-up comedian, my mom just calls me a Pakistani. For real, that doctor thing is so real, though. Like, from kindergarten all the way up, she expected good grades. When I was coming back from the 2nd grade, I had a bunch of A's and 1 B. Just 1 B. And she was like, you're not my son anymore. And the only reason she took me back is because I'm a tax exemption or tax returns. And the fucked up part was she didn't mark me down as her kid. I was her disability. I remember when I told her, hey mom, I want to be a stand-up comic. She's like, why do you want to do that? And I was like, oh, I gotta make people laugh, I gotta travel. She's like, oh, travel, 1 sec. She leaves the room and comes back with a brochure for Doctors Without Borders. But I started stand-up when I was 16 years old. And I didn't have a car back then. She was the one driving me to shows and back. And after every single show, she told me how much better I could be doing, and told me which jokes worked. I loved it. But she actually did her homework on comedy, like what does it take to be a comedian, how long does it take? And she told me most of these comedians are alcoholics, they're drug addicts, they don't have a happy life. I'm like, Mom, it's not that bad. At least I'm not doing improv. And it's a fun time. Now, as an adult, my mom and I, we do joke about like me not having a father, her not having a husband. Big example of this is she talks about how I should get married to an Indian girl all the time. She brings it up all the time. I'm like, hey mom, if you want me to get married so badly, why don't you do it again and show me it works? And to this, she replied back with, if I get with a man and he meets you, he's going to leave me. That is what happened the last time. And in like Indian culture, like very similar to other cultures, we call our elders uncle or auntie. And I was with an Indian filmmaker in LA. His name is Ron. He's twice my age. So I call him Ron Uncle out of respect. And we're eating lunch. I take a picture with him, post on Facebook saying, hanging out with Ron Uncle. My mom sees this picture, calls me up and says, who is Ron Uncle? We do not have Ron Uncle in this family. And I'm like, oh, Ma, he's like family to me. And she's like, oh.